They abandoned a dead puppy at a campsite, but a stray cat did something unbelievable. It started with the smell of firewood and grilled burgers, the distant echo of children's laughter, and the golden hues of a fading summer day. Jasper, a lean, battle-scarred tabby, perched high on a mossy boulder, his sharp green eyes scanning the remnants of a campsite deep in Redwood Valley, California. He had survived for years on these lands, mastering the art of patience and seclusion, watching humans from afar as they came and went, leaving behind scraps that kept him fed. Tonight he expected nothing more than leftover hot dogs or stale bread. But as he prowled through the clearing, something stopped him cold, a sound that didn't belong. A weak, trembling whimper. Jasper's fur bristled. A cry like that in the wilderness rarely led to anything good. Yet something deep in his gut told him he couldn't just walk away. What he found next would change everything. Jasper's ears twitched as the sound cut through the stillness of the trees. A faint, high-pitched whimper, barely audible over the rustling leaves. His instincts told him to ignore it. Out here, weakness meant death, and he had long learned to look out for himself. Yet something about the sound made him hesitate. It wasn't the cry of a wounded animal or the sharp distress call of a bird. It was something smaller, something desperate. His paws moved before his mind could catch up, guiding him toward the dense undergrowth beyond the abandoned campsite. The air grew thick with the scent of damp earth and pine, mingling with something unfamiliar, fear. Jasper crouched low, his body fluid and silent as he crept toward the noise. Then through the tangle of brambles he saw it. A German Shepherd puppy, no more than a few months old, lay tangled in a cruel snarl of thorny vines. Its coat, once a rich black and tan, was caked in mud and burrs. Wide, frightened eyes locked onto his, pleading. The pup struggled weakly, its thin legs barely able to push against the ground, but every movement only drove the thorns deeper into its skin. Jasper should have turned away. This wasn't his fight. The wilderness had no mercy for stragglers, but something in those eyes, a raw, innocent terror, unearthed a memory long buried beneath years of solitude. He had been small once, helpless, forgotten. With a slow, deliberate step, he moved closer. The puppy let out a pitiful yelp, but didn't try to flee. Jasper made a soft, trilling sound, one he hadn't used since he was a kitten, a reassurance. Then carefully he extended a paw and hooked a single thorn, pulling it free. The puppy flinched but didn't resist. Another thorn, then another. When the last vine finally fell away, the pup collapsed onto the forest floor, exhausted but free. And for the first time in years, Jasper felt something stir within him. Something he wasn't ready to name. The night pressed in around them, cold and unrelenting. Jasper sat rigid, his tail flicking as he watched the puppy struggle to its feet, legs trembling like a newborn fawn. The pup let out a soft whimper, eyes darting between Jasper and the darkened forest. It was weak, helpless, completely unequipped for survival. Jasper could leave now. His job was done. The pup was free and he had no business getting tangled up in its fate. But as the wind shifted, carrying the distant howl of a coyote, his ears flattened. He knew what would happen if he walked away. The wilderness was merciless. A pup this small wouldn't last till morning. With a frustrated sigh, Jasper turned and padded forward, brushing his tail against the pup's shoulder in a silent command. "Follow me." The pup hesitated, but then limped after him, dragging its paws through the thick underbrush. Jasper set a slow pace, glancing back every few steps to make sure it was keeping up. It wasn't. After barely a few minutes, the pup collapsed again, panting heavily. Jasper growled, irritated. He could hunt, he could fight, but he wasn't a nursemaid. Still, the sight of the puppy lying there, ribs barely rising and falling, stirred something deep in his gut, something uncomfortably close to responsibility. His eyes scanned the area, searching for anything that could help. A memory surfaced, a small creek near the edge of the woods. If the pup was going to survive the night, it needed water and food. Jasper nudged the pup, urging it forward. "Get up," he would have said if he could speak. The pup let out a feeble whine but obeyed, stumbling along beside him. As they moved, Jasper kept his senses sharp. Every crack of a twig, every rustling leaf could mean danger. The forest was no place for sentiment, but for reasons he couldn't quite explain, he wasn't ready to let this pup die. Not yet. The first lights of the town shimmered through the trees like distant stars, just beyond the open fields that separated the wilderness from human life. Jasper crouched low in the tall grass, his sharp eyes scanning the quiet neighborhood ahead. The pup, he had started calling it Buck in his mind, stood beside him, shivering from exhaustion. The poor thing had barely made it this far, stumbling every few steps, but it had followed him with unwavering trust. That trust made Jasper uneasy. He wasn't used to anyone relying on him. The wind carried the scent of warm food, something meaty, something rich. Buck perked up at the smell, taking a few eager steps forward before his legs gave out beneath him. Jasper sighed. The pup wouldn't last much longer. It needed help, real help. Not from a stray cat that barely scraped by, but from someone who knew how to care for something fragile. Someone like the humans in these houses. Jasper's gaze landed on a small, weathered bungalow nestled at the end of the street. A warm porch light flickered, casting a golden glow over a garden lined with wildflowers. But it wasn't the house that caught Jasper's attention. It was the figure kneeling in the dirt, humming softly as she tended to her roses. An old woman, her silver hair tucked beneath a sun hat, her frail hands moving with care. She smelled of lavender and something else. Something Jasper couldn't name, but recognized. Kindness. This was their best chance. Jasper nudged Buck forward, but the pup barely moved. It let out a weak, pitiful whimper. The sound caught the woman's attention. She turned, her eyes widening as she spotted the small, shaking form in the grass. "Oh dear," she murmured, her voice thick with concern. Jasper tensed, ready to bolt if she made the wrong move. But instead, she set down her gardening tools and reached out with both hands, her expression soft. "Well now," she said gently. "Where did you come from, little one?" The moment the woman scooped Buck into her arms, Jasper's muscles tensed. Every instinct screamed at him to run, to disappear into the night before she noticed him. But something rooted him to the spot. Maybe it was the way she cradled the pup against her chest, murmuring soft reassurances. Maybe it was the way Buck, too weak to resist, let out a relieved sigh and melted into her embrace. Jasper slunk back into the shadows, his keen eyes watching as she carried Buck up the porch steps and into the house. The door creaked shut behind them, and just like that, the pup was gone. The strange weight in Jasper's chest tightened. He had brought Buck this far, yet now, standing alone in the cool night air, it felt unfinished. The soft glow of a kitchen light flickered behind the window. Inside, the woman, Judy, as the faded mailbox had read, set Buck down on a thick knitted blanket. She moved with practiced care, like someone who had done this before. Jasper crept closer, his paws silent against the wooden porch. Through the glass, he watched as she filled a bowl with water, guiding Buck's trembling snout toward it. The pup drank greedily, his entire body shaking with relief. Jasper could have left then. He should have left, but he didn't. Instead, he waited. Minutes passed. Then the door opened again. A soft creak. Jasper froze, every muscle coiled. Judy stepped onto the porch, a small dish in her hand. She placed it down gently, then took a step back. The scent hit him immediately. Milk, fresh and warm. Jasper's ears flicked. She wasn't looking at him, not directly, but her message was clear. He hesitated only a second before slinking forward, his whiskers twitching. He drank. From the corner of his eye, he saw her smile. And for the first time in years, he didn't feel like just another shadow in the night. Jasper had never stayed in one place for long. His life was built on movement, never growing attached, never relying on anyone. And yet, as the days passed, he found himself lingering. The house, warm and steady, was becoming familiar. The woman, Judy, never tried to force him inside, never reached too quickly. But every morning there was a fresh bowl of food waiting on the porch. Every evening, a quiet moment where she'd sit with a cup of tea, humming softly, as if inviting him to stay without a single word. And then there was Buck. The pup, once weak and trembling, was getting stronger. His coat grew shinier, his steps steadier. He followed Judy around the house, his tail wagging at every gentle touch, every kind word. But despite all that, whenever he was outside, his eyes searched the yard. Jasper knew what Buck was looking for. Him. Jasper tried to pretend he didn't notice. He tried to stay aloof, keeping to the edges of the property, never stepping too close. But Buck was relentless. Whenever he spotted Jasper, his ears perked up, his tail thumped wildly, and before Jasper could slink away, Buck would bound toward him, tripping over his own paws in excitement. At first, Jasper hissed, swatting the pup away. He didn't play. He didn't need anyone. But Buck never backed down. Every day he tried again. And slowly, so slowly Jasper barely noticed, it became routine, a quiet companionship. They would sit together in the sun, Buck pressing against Jasper's side, content just to be near. Sometimes Buck would drop a stick at Jasper's paws, waiting, hopeful. Jasper never chased it, but he no longer walked away either. One evening, as Judy sat on the porch watching them, she smiled. "You're not so wild after all, are you?" she murmured. Jasper flicked his tail but didn't move. Maybe for once he didn't have to be. Strength isn't about how loud you speak or how much power you hold. It's about knowing when to stand your ground, even when the world expects you to back down. Greg and Claire's stories remind us that injustice thrives in silence. Bullies, whether they wear a badge or a leather jacket, count on fear to keep people in line. But when one person refuses to be intimidated, it forces the world to take notice. For many of us, life has thrown challenges our way. Moments when we were tested, when we had to choose between accepting what was wrong or standing up for what was right. And the truth is, courage doesn't always come in grand gestures. Sometimes it's in a firm voice that refuses to waver, in the quiet confidence of knowing your worth, or in the loyal presence of someone, human or not, who stands by your side. As we grow older, we realize that justice isn't just about punishment. It's about accountability, about making sure that the world we leave behind is better than the one we inherited. So ask yourself, what will you do when the moment comes? Will you stay silent? Or will you stand, like Greg, like Claire, like Max, ready, steady, unshaken. At its heart, this story is about the unexpected bonds that shape us, the moments of kindness, responsibility, and love that find us when we least expect them. Jasper, a loner hardened by survival, never planned to care for anyone. But in saving Buck, he discovered something deeper: connection. Life often presents us with chances to open our hearts, even when we think we have nothing left to give. Whether it's an abandoned animal, a lonely neighbor, or a struggling friend, our smallest acts of kindness can change lives, including our own. For older adults, this message resonates deeply. As time passes, relationships evolve, and solitude may grow, but purpose is always within reach. Taking a chance on love, whether through companionship, mentorship, or simply offering a helping hand, can bring unexpected joy. Jasper didn't think he needed Buck, but in the end, he did. And maybe, just maybe, we all do.